Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nutty Chess Tips with me, Nutty T. Today I'm going to show you some attacking lines when your opponent plays the Dutch defence. This is called the Hopton Attack, and I've had great success over the board and also on online games. So, as usual, check it out. First moves are d4, f5, and now we go in for the attack with bishop g5. And now your opponent's main moves here are h6, g6 and knight f6. I played a good friend of mine, Simon Williams, you may know him as Ginger GM, and got into an endgame. He still beat me, but we got into an endgame and I made him think. So if your opponent goes h6, now we simply bring the bishop back to h4. When I played Simon, he played this move, which was g5. Now I play e3, going on the counter. Now, obviously, as a grandmaster, he's not going to fall into this trap, but if they take the bishop, now we simply come in with skadoosh, queen h5, checkmate. So let's go back. Now, obviously, Simon saw this and he's not going to fall into these little traps. He went bishop g7. Bring the bishop back to g3. And now he went knight f6. Now, as an attacking player, I just go h4, trying to open this weak pawn structure. And now black went g4, not allowing me to open the lines. And now I go knight c3, just developing the knight. My opponent went h5. I then moved the g knight to e2, trying to get on this space. Black went d6. Here I just go knight f4. Simon just did this move, knight takes knight. And now I take back with the knight, with the bishop. And now he moves in with e5. We takes, and then we exchange the queens, and now castle. If I remember correctly, went bishop d7, bishop back. On the eval bar that white is plus 0.5, which is basically even. But that is when you're playing against a grandmaster. Let's go back. So now, what if they take the bishop? Now here I just recommend taking the knight. And now if they move in with e5, we have this move, knight g6. And just have a look at this. If they move the rook to g8, we come in with this move, which is bishop c4. This rook has nowhere to go. If the rook slides into f8, we can just take this off. When they take with the bishop, pawn takes, we could exchange queens, but there is a nice little move here, which is bishop f7. Obviously, if the king takes a bishop, we have this move, which is boom, and the queen is gone. So if they see this and go e7 with the king, bring the bishop back, and then when they exchange queens, we take with the rook. They move the king to threaten the bishop, and now we can just come in with rook d8. And look at this. If they take the bishop, we can then just check on h5. When they move back to f7, now we can just take the bishop on c8. And look at these pieces, they can't really move. If they go bishop b4, now we just check, and look at this, this is just winning for white. Let's go back. What if your opponent moves the rook to h7? Well, again, we move the bishop to c4. And now, what if they move the bishop to f6? We can now just take, the bishop takes back, we can just take with the knight. If d takes the knight, we can now come in with the check. When king takes, now we can castle, and just look at this position again. This is just winning for white. So let's go back. Here, what if queen f6? Now, if queen f6, I just recommend securing this knight, and then when the queen moves to g5, iron up this pawn. We have this move, which is knight d5, and now we're securing this pawn with the knight. If king then moves to d8, and now we have this move, which is d takes e. And in a similar situation, they usually take back with the bishop, we take with the knight, and when they take, instead of moving this knight first, we have castles. Now, obviously, we're looking at check. So if king e8, we go e4. Now, this is just deadly for black. If they take, we now have knight f6. And now if king to f8, we now have queen d8 check. And now it's unstoppable. They only have one space to go, and that is g7 with the king. And now we just go in for the kill with a skadoosh. Checkmate with the queen on g8. So let's go back. What if they go g6? Now, when I see this move, I just go e3. The most common move you're going to see is bishop g7. Now I just develop the knight to c3. When they move the knight to f6, I like this move, which is h4. Now, if they threaten the bishop, take off this knight. When the bishop takes back, I like this move, which is queen f3. If they go e6, securing this pawn, I respond with g4. If they take the pawn on h4, we take the pawn. When they take back, we have this move, queen f4. There's two moves your opponent usually makes here. They usually go to g5 or g6. If they go to g5, we just have this move, which is oosh, queen e5, and we're eyeing up the rook as well as the king. So let's go back. Now, what if your opponent sees this and goes bishop f6? Well, I have this sweet move, Kamikaze, rook h6. And now, obviously, if they take, we take back. If they counter-attack with g5, what do we do now? We just take the rook with a check. They take back with the bishop. You can take the pawn and we're still winning. There is a better move, because if you take the pawn, we can lead into this line. It's still winning, but obviously it's not as good, because as you see with the eval bar, it's gone down to plus 1.5. We're still winning, but there is a better move, which is this, Queen H2. Now we're threatening this bishop. If the bishop moves to F3, now we have this move, which is Knight D5. Now we're threatening this pawn, and we're also threatening the bishop. The bishop is guarded. If they do this C6 move, we just go in for the check, and we're eyeing up the king and the rook. So what if they do Knight A6? If they do this knight move guarding this pawn, I call you and I raise you with Queen H6. And now if bishop goes back to E7, now we have this move, Queen check on H5. When the king moves to F8, we have this move, which is Queen H8 check. And now the king is very much in the open. It has to go to F7. When it goes to F7, we have this move, which is Queen H7 check. If he goes back, boom, Queen G7 checkmate. So they often go E6. But now we just go Queen G6, and we're leaving this knight. And now if they get greedy and take the knight, now we have this move, C4. Check to the king. The king has to move to E4. And now we just go castles. And as you can see, the end is near. There is nothing they can do. Look at these pieces. Any move, such as Queen H8, we just go boom. Bishop D3 checkmate. So let's go back. Last but not least in this variation is Knight F6. If they do this move, just whip it off. The most common move is the e-pawn taking the bishop, but I'll just show you this, because if you get it, you can get a winning position very quick. So if they take with the g-pawn, instead of E3, play E4. Obviously, if they take, we have skadoosh, Queen H5 checkmate. So often you'll see this move, D6. If you see D6, we have still got this line, so we take advantage. And now when they move to D7, we can simply take this pawn. And now when they move the pawn, we can just move back to F3. As you can see, their king is no longer able to castle. We have all our pawns intact. After knight C6, I just recommend knight G to E2. Get your other knight to C3 and just start developing, playing chess here. We're actually winning. So let's go back. The most common move you're going to see here is E takes the bishop. Now here we don't go E4, we go E3. Now you'll probably see d5, c4. If they take, we just take with the bishop. It is not usually wise to take, so they usually guard with the bishop. And now we just go knight c3. If they take, push the pawn to d5. When they go back, we now take the pawn on c4. When they move knight to d7, we now have this move, which is queen c2. We'll iron up this pawn, so they usually guard with g6, and now we just come in with h4. If they respond by doing h5, we now go knight g to e2. And as you can see in this line, this is a common move structure, getting your knight to e2 and your other knight to c3. If they go bishop d6, we have this lovely move, knight d4. And look at this. If now they castle, we have this lovely move, which is knight e6. Ooh. Now, if they take, we take with the pawn. We'll iron up this knight, but we've also got this line to the king. If they just move the knight, we now have a free queen. So let's go back. What if they see this and they just go king g7? If they go king g7, we just get free knight, and when they take back, we have this move, which is castle on the queen side. And now look at this position, we're just winning here. Let's go back. What if in this position they just secure the pawn with c6? If they do this move, we can now secure our pawn chain with c5. And look at this. If they now go b6, we now have b4. If they now go a5, we go a3. And look at this nice little pyramid we've got. If they take with the a pawn, we just take back. We'll iron up the rook, so if they take the rook, we just take back. If b takes c, we take them back. Black is very compact. These bishops are going nowhere. If queen c7, now we just go bishop d3. And now it's looking more like a Jabava London. If they go f4, we just go e4. Takes, and we take back with the knight. If they move to threaten the knight with the bishop, we now go knight f3. If bishop e7, we castle, they castle, we just slide the rook to e1. If they move the rook to e8, knight d6. If they move the rook again, threatening our knight, queen b1. If they get greedy and take the knight, we have this move, which is bishop takes h7 check. When they move king to h8, we take the bishop, they take back, and now we have queen g6. And look at this. If they move the bishop to threaten our bishop, we move in with the knight. They usually take. I had this over the board against a 1900 player, and I just went rook e8. The only move he had was to take. I took the rook. When he moves the bishop to cover the check, we come in with the check, again with the knight. The only space the king has got is king h7, but now we come in with the check. If he moves back, queen h5, the bishop has to cover, and then we go whoosh. Queen takes the bishop, checkmate. So, I hope you've liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Check out the other videos, and it's nice.